Hello students, welcome to Unix programming. Today we will start the fourth module, that is process control. In that the first topic is changing user IDs and the group IDs. Whenever our program is going to be executed, it will execute in some privileges. If you require some additional privileges or need to gain access to the resources which they cannot currently are not allowed to access, they need to change their user or the group ID to an ID that has the appropriate privileges or the accesses. Similarly, when our program needs to lower their privileges or prevent the access to the certain resources, they do so by changing either their user ID to the group IDs to an ID without the privilege or ability to access the resources. So here we are going to see how you are going to change your user ID and the group ID to the privileged user ID and the group IDs and the unprivileged user ID and the group IDs. There are three different types of UIDs are defined here. UID is a unique integer number by using which each process will be identified in the system. Real user ID, effective user ID and the saved user IDs are there. Real user ID, it is the account of the owner of that process. It is going to define which files that this process has access to. For which all files this process has the access, that is defined by the real user ID. Effective user ID, it is normally same as the real user ID, but sometimes it will be changed to enable a non-privileged access to the user to access the files that can only be accessed by the root. Here, if you want to access the resources which do not have access to the resources, so you want to access such resources. In that case, you have to change from real user ID to the effective user ID. Then next is saved user ID. It is used when a process is running with the elevated privileges and need to do some underprivileged work. Means here you want to change from privileged to the non-privileged resources. Okay, you have the permission to access some resources, but right now you does not require those resources. So for that you have to change from privileged to the non-privileged mode. So in that case, whatever the your original privileges or the permissions are there, those will be set to your saved user ID and the new user ID will be assigned to your process. Okay, so here it is used when a process is running with the elevated more privileges which needs to be some underprivileged work. This can be achieved by temporarily switching to a non-privileged account. Okay. Then next, changing the user ID and the group ID. Changing the user ID and the group ID, it will be done by using the two functions, set UID and the set GUID. Set UID, it will be set the user ID, and set GID, it will be set the group ID. And here you have to set the user ID and the group ID. Okay, on it is going to return the two values. 0 will be written if successfully that assignment will be done. Okay, or successfully that change has been done, then the 0 will be written, else it is going to return the -1 on the error there. So whenever you are performing to change the user ID or the group IDs to the some privileged and the non-privileged mode, you have to follow some rules there. Okay, so here we are taking only the user ID, but the same rules will be applicable for group ID also. Okay. See, the first rule is if the process has the super user privileges, in that case the set UID function, it is going to set the real user ID, effective user ID and saved set user ID to the UID. If you have the super user privileges, and in that case if you are going to call the set UID function, in that time this function, it is going to assign your UID, whatever the parameter you are going to pass, that ID will be set to your real user ID, effective user ID, and the saved set user ID. Second case, or the second rule, if the process does not have the super user privileges, but the UID, it is equals to either the real user ID or the saved set user ID, that time your set UID sets only the effective user ID to the UID. The real user ID and the saved set user ID are not going to change there. Then third rule is, if neither of these two condition is true, means you don't have the super user privileges and the UID is not equal to real user ID or the saved set user ID. In that case, the error will be get generated, and that error is assigned to the E permission and -1 will be returned. Okay, so these three conditions or the three rules are assigned to your group ID also. Next is changing user ID and the group IDs. Here we are going to use the 4 different types of functions. The first one is the set RUID and the set REGID. Okay, here it will be used for underprivileged user group. Okay, here to swap the real user ID and the effective user ID with the underprivileged user ID, you are going to use these two functions. Okay, here also they are going to return the 0 if everything is okay, else -1 on the error. Here we are going to supply a value of 1 for any of these arguments to indicate that the corresponding ID should remain unchanged. The rule is simple here. An unprivileged user can always swap between the user ID and the effective user ID. This allows the set user ID program to swap to the user's normal permission and swap back again later for the set user ID operations. Next is set UID and the set EGID, that is for the effective user ID. These functions are similar to our set UID and the set GID, but only the effective user ID or the effective group ID will be changed here. Here also they are going to return the 0 if the changing has been done perfectly, else it is going to return the -1 on the error. An unprivileged user can set its effective user ID to either its real user ID or its saved set user ID. For a privileged user, only the effective user ID is set to the UID. Here we will see the diagram which is going to summarize the all functions which we have seen here. Here see, set UID is there. Where set UID, it is going to change your real user ID, effective user ID and the saved set user ID. Just you have to pass the UID as a parameter. That UID will be assigned to your real user ID, effective user ID and the saved set user ID. Then next is set RUID is there, which is going to set the past ID to the real user ID and the effective user ID. Here the unprivileged processes have to swap between the real user ID and the effective user ID. Then next is set effective user ID. Here also you are able to swap between the effective user ID and the saved set user ID. Here unprivileged processes are going to swap between the effective user ID and the saved set user ID. Even this will be get executed by using the EX function here. Next is interpreter files. These files are actually a text files which are begin with the line of the form this. Okay, here already we have seen this form of the line while writing the shell scripts. Okay, the space between this exclamatory mark and the path name is optional here. It's not necessary that always you have to leave a space here. It is just a optional. See the first example, that is hash, then exclamatory mark, then slash bin and slash sh. It is going to indicate that you are going to use the sh interpreter. Second one, it is going to indicate you are going to use the csh interpreter, and third one, it is going to indicate that you are going to use the Perl interpreter. See here one example is there. What you are doing here? First you are including the interpreter, that is the where the interpreter is present, that path you have to include here. Then you are including one comment, this is the comment. Then you are executing the echo command, date command and the ls command. Okay, so the path name is normally an absolute path name since there is no special operations are performed on it. The recognition of these files is done within the kernel as a part of processing the exe system calls. Next is system functions. Here the system function, it will allow us to execute the Unix commands within a program. It will allow to execute the command strings which has been passed as a parameter to your system function within a functions of C and C++ programs. The return values of system function is if either fork function or the wait PID fails, it is going to return an error other than the interrupt. System is going to return the -1 with the error number which it will be set to indicate that there is a error. Then if the exe fails, it is going to imply that shell cannot be executed, that command cannot be executed. The return value is as if the shell had been executed, that is here it is going to return the exit 127. This is by default it is going to return there. Otherwise all three functions like fork, exe and wait PID, it will be succeed. Then the return value of your system function is the normal termination status of the shell, that is the output of that command string. If the command string is the null pointer, the system is going to return the non-zero only if a command processor is available. This feature determines whether the system function is supported on a given operating system or no. Here in the Unix system, the system function is always available. We will see how the system function will be implemented. Before that, we will see some of the examples. Just here, system, I am going to call the system function, and in that I want to execute the command date, where the output of date will be indirected to the file there. Then I am executing the command ls-l, so this command will be sent as a parameter to our system function. Next is cat foo is there. Here I am executing the cat foo functions, then move command I am going to execute here. Next is the system functions without the signal handling. Here we will see how the system function will be implemented in the Linux operating system. So here three header files are included: system wait, error number and the std.h is there. So here for the system we are passing the one argument, that is my command string. Okay, so I require the process ID, so PID will be declared, and I require the status there. If command string is equal to null, means you have not passed any command as a parameter, so just you are going to return the one there. Always a command processor with the Unix. If PID is equal to fork less than 0, if you are going to pass any command there, to execute that command, Unix has to create one child, and the child will be created by using the fork function. So here you are calling the fork function, and you are going to check whether the child has been created or no. If the return value is less than 0 means the child has been not created. So status you are going to set as the -1 and you are exiting from it. Else, if PID is equal to 0 means what? The child will be get created there. You are going to call the EXEL function, then one interpreter is there, that is /bin/sh is there, and you are going to execute that command string. Okay, if anything has been done, just you are going to call the error, that is 127, by the exit function. Okay, and at the end you are going to call the wait PID function to delete the fork function there. So by using fork function, EXEL and the wait PID, you are going to implement the system function there, where the system function it will be used to execute the Unix commands in the some other languages like C and C++. Here we will see the another one example. Just see, int main void int status is there. If status is equal to system, you are going to pass the date as a parameter. You are executing the date command within by calling the system in the C language. Okay, if the status of your status variable is less than 0 means this you are going to display the error, then exit, you are displaying the status of the that particular command. Then if status is second command you are executing, status is equal to system of no such command, if it is less than 0 you are going to display the error. Then third command who and exit 44 you are going to execute. If any errors are there, that will be get displayed. Just see the output here. You have compiled the program. Okay, you have saved this file with the .c extension and now you have executed, that is ./a.out. Here the first command is date command, so date command will be get executed directly here. Okay, so what is the exit status here? 0 means it is normal termination and that you are executing. Next command is you have passed it as the no such command, and we know that with the name no such command any command is not exist there. In that case normal termination is there. Okay, but the exit status is 127. Here in the previously we have seen, if the command is not exist, that time you are going to set the error as 127, so that will be written. So we are going to get that one as the output here. Then the third is you are executing the two commands, that is who and the exit 44. First the who command will be get executed and you are going to change the exit status value as the 44. By default it will be 127, you are externally changing it to the 44, that will be done. Then the next example is execute the command line argument using the system function. Here you are passing the command string through the command line argument. Okay, so here if arguments are less than 2 means command line arguments are required. You have not passed any command line argument. If you have passed a command line argument, then the count of arguments should be greater than 2 there. So the first command you are going to pass here, see status is equal to system of argument 1. So here you are passing the first argument command string, then that will be get executed and you are going to check the status and that will be displayed. Then next is print the real and effective user IDs. Okay, so just you are going to display the real user ID and the effective user ID of any processes. You have to call the get UID and the get effective UID within your print function.